I'm ready for all today, through all the pain, all the way, the fight for all, my life, the love, we're taking it all the way, all the way.
So this episode is going to be the one that I was bred to do because everybody knows through and through I am a hater. I am that guy that follows cancel culture and specifically hates on that person in that moment, not because I think they did anything wrong, but because I just want to pile on it. And I think it's fun. And this is going to be that episode where we talk about the players that we don't want on our fantasy football teams for whatever reasons. You could not like his hairstyle. You could not like his team. You could not like the division. Him, any reason. We're going to be talking about players we don't want on our fantasy football team. At least that's what I'll do. But of course, the guests that we have on this legendary show are actually going to have some analytical information and all that good stuff for why you shouldn't have them on your fantasy team if you actually want to compete. So, of course, we're going to broadcast and show the guests on this show. Of course, we're going to lead it off with Mr. Marcas Grant, fantasy analyst, NFL media, and Matthew Berry's fantasy life. So, of course, right before you say your hellos, I want to know, what is your favorite Gatorade flavor and why is it the light blue?
Yeah, I don't know flavors. I just know colors.
Exactly. It's the light blue. That is the flavor.
Like, well, I don't know. There's light blue. There's like that fluorescent blue. It's not red. I know that.
No.
I might even go old school and go orange. Here's the thing. I'm old enough. I don't know if anybody else here. I'm old enough to remember when Gatorade came in glass bottles.
Oh, yeah. See, that
was a thing?
Yeah, man. Like now there's all in plastic bottles, but like Gatorade used to come in actual legit glass. I mean, they're like the same shape pretty much as they are now, but just glass instead of plastic. For real.
That is a boomer moment. So your light blue is the best one, right?
No, I think I'm like I said, I'm old school. I'm gonna go like orange or like that light green because like the original colors that it came in.
Yeah, as long as you don't like fruit punch or grape, I think you're okay.
Again, I didn't know the flavor names. I just
that would be the red and the purple one.
I just
know the red and the purple.
So yeah,
those are sociopaths. All right, moving on to the next one with Joshua Cho. No real fantasy affiliation. Of course, he is a daily poster on, of course, Twitter or what is it, X now? Fantasy content in season for Dynasty and Redraft. Mr. Joshua, which one's your favorite Star Wars movie, and why is it the third? It's the Revenge of the Sith. It has to be the third one, right?
Dude, I don't want to disappoint anyone, but I was actually more of a Star Trek guy growing up. I don't know if that makes me
never mind.
The enemy of yours. But I think probably one that's memorable to me is actually episode 1, I think.
I can respect that.
Yeah,
I respect that. You guys, what about you, Marcus? Are you a Star Wars guy?
I am. I would say the best Star Wars movie is not even in the 9. It's Rogue One. It's the best.
Rogue One. Honestly, Rogue One. I can respect that. I can respect that one.
Rogue One is the best Star Wars movie there is. I've made peace with the prequels. I have not yet gone back to watch the 7, 8, 9. I watched them once in the theater.
Yeah.
I haven't had it in my stomach to watch them again yet.
Yeah.
Is it bad? Is it bad that I couldn't finish The Mandalorian? Like everyone raved about it, and I just
it was alright.
The first 2 seasons were good, and then it just kind of it's like whatever. But the first couple seasons were actually really good.
Yeah, I agree with that one. All right, last but not least, we got Steezy, 32-bit, and Mr. Independent. Now, okay, so I did some some Twitter stalking. It turns out you're a Seahawks fan or a Seahawks analyst, either or. That's kind of sad, honestly. I wouldn't do that.
Don't tell me you're a Niners fan.
A little bit. Not gonna lie. I hear Cisco, All right, so
that makes sense.
So when you're analyzing a specific team, how much of it is bias, or how much of it is actual? Like, I don't want to say like bias as like an attack, but like you're consistently looking for specific information or analytical to benefit your player.
Of course.
How much of it?
This is gonna sound crazy, but I'm being honest here. I'm being truthful. I'd say less than 5%. Less than 5%. I like to think that, most people around me, at least the people that tune in to, sort of stuff that I put out there, I get a lot of praise for not being biased, right? And I take a lot of pride in that. I know a lot of the times when somebody covers a specific team, it's hard to, especially when that's, that was your team, that was a team that you kind of grew up rooting for. It's kind of hard to, separate your biases and whatnot. But for me, I just love football in general. And so I think it's a little easier for me to separate my bias and whatnot. I call it how I see it. And so if something is wrong, or if the public is writing with this take, but I don't necessarily feel that way, then I don't think it's easy, or I don't think it's hard to separate my bias, just because I've always had a love for the game and I loved football before I became a fan of the Seahawks.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that's always a good point right there, because when I take a look at specifically beat writer reports, I always try to, maybe I'm being too harsh, but I always take those reports with a grain of salt, because it's like,
as you should, though.
He is following that team. He is reporting specifically that team. So when I'm looking at maybe, if I'm deciding between I want this player or this player, and I have like a tiebreaker, sometimes I'll look at stuff like that to see, okay, maybe they have some better insight on specific that player and all that good stuff. So of course, like I mentioned earlier, we're going to be talking about a lot of the players that we don't want on our fantasy teams, ones that we think are either rated way too high on the draft board, aren't going to perform, have some either rookies that are going to be stepping in and taking their supply and their carries and receptions and all that good stuff, or even players that are just injury prone or who's just sticking too high on that list. I mean, right now I could look at a couple of players in the rounds 1 through 4 who we're going to be specifically talking about. I'm like, nah, I wouldn't do it. But of course, that's going to be for you guys to debate and decide on this one. Any closing remarks for you guys? Do you want to move on, or is there any other closing statements you guys want to go through?
I'm good.
Good.
Right.
I'm good.
All right. So, okay. So right now the hater right now, we're turning it up to 11, and right now I'm looking at the Fantasy Pros ADP draft list, and realistically, if you go through half point PPR or PPR in general, there's not too much of a difference. But I have noticed, and this is crazy, from maybe 5 years ago, 10 years ago, is going to be a significant difference. But the way the first round and the second round are structured are incredibly different from how it was in the previous years. Because right now, other than Christian McCaffrey, I'm gonna move him to the side for right now. And from picks 2 through 12 right now, picks through to 12 are almost all exclusively wide receivers. And you would have never seen that 3 years ago. 2 years ago, you probably wouldn't even see that. But now I think we're seeing a huge wide receiver meta going on in fantasy football. And that's just the way the sport has changed in recent years. And I think now a lot of us who were RB heavy, including myself, I was always a RB heavy person. I am now forced, and a lot of the people listening, and even maybe the analysts here, have to switch their mentality on their draft styles in order to conform to the new NFL. I wanted to get your guys' opinion on that real fast, because other than Christian McCaffrey, there is not really a good running back that you can kind of not necessarily set and forget, but basically set and forget.
Oh, I disagree. I mean, there aren't as many, obviously. Like, McCaffrey's there, but I think this year you got Breece Hall, you got Bijan Robinson. I think those are the other two guys that you can plug in there and not worry about it, because those are the other two guys that don't have a whole lot of competition behind them. They're going to get a lot of touches. They're going to catch the football, maybe not as much as McCaffrey, but pretty close to it. They have the same level of explosiveness, if not more explosiveness than McCaffrey. Like, I'm with you. It's not as many as it used to be, right? Like, I am an old. I remember when the first round used to be, like, if you had a 12-team league, it would be like 10 running backs and then maybe, a couple of wide receivers or something like that. It's very, very different now, but we do still have a few. They're not fully extinct. They're very much endangered, but they're not extinct yet.
Yeah, I mean, the glory days, right? I when I started playing like 20 plus years ago, I mean, it was running back. I still really prescribe to having heavy RB myself, As Marcus said, we got Christian McCaffrey, and then we've got Breece Hall, Bijan Robinson. We also have Jahmyr Gibbs kind of on that echelon trying to get through, but as we know, David Montgomery is still there, so he's probably going to cap his upside a little bit. But you know what? If I'm in the first round and I'm at the back end, I have no problem taking like Saquon Barkley and Jonathan Taylor to start. Like two more guys who are studs who are going to catch the ball out of the backfield on really good offenses this year. And so I'm still going heavy on RB this year, I think. And people might call me too old school, but I tend to have success, kind of season in and season out. So I think you're okay to go with running backs, especially since people are so crazy on the meta, right? When someone zigs, you zag. So it might actually be easier to kind of get two running backs like studs at the starting positions and even scoop one up to play in the flex every week. That's what I prefer, actually. Yeah.
Mr. Steezy, a closing remark on this one?
Yeah, honestly, I mean, for me personally, I'm adapting, with the times just a little bit. Last year, I was in about 25 leagues. The year before that, I was in 40 leagues. Ooh. And I kind of went across each of the championship teams in every league that I was in. And a lot of those teams were wide receiver heavy. And so it's like, for me, I'm not saying that just because they won championships with wide receiver heavy rosters that's what I got to do. But last year, I kind of had a small shift in philosophy. And I went with the hero RB strategy instead, where I would take my feature back, right? Somewhere within the first 3 rounds, I'd have one of those guys. I'd go wide receiver, tight end, quarterback, and then around round 8 or 9, I'm real good at finding, a running back in that range, a guy that could start, a guy that's, that's going to be featured, a guy that everyone's sleeping on. And so for me, I'm a little bit old school, but I'm adapting to the times a little bit. I've altered my draft strategy, but building around that one star running back, for me, I don't think that'll ever change.
Yeah, I mean, I think to this point too, right? Like we talk about zero RB, and I think what Steezy is saying and what Josh is saying, I think sort of go hand in hand, right? Because now with everybody going so wide receiver crazy, it's easy to go out and get a running back. Like I think it's funny because if everybody's trying to do zero RB, then really nobody is doing zero RB. We're just drafting. But if everybody's going wide receiver and everybody is trying to do the zero RB, it is a lot easier to go out and get a couple of good guys. And I think for Steezy's point, I don't know. Occasionally, I will do just a straight up real true zero RB where I will wait until like round 4 or 5, maybe even later before I get my first one. But a lot of times, I'm kind of more of the hero RB where I will take a Christian McCaffrey or Bijan or Breece Hall early, and then I'll maybe go with a few wide receivers, maybe an elite tight end if he is there before I come back to running back, say in round 6 or 7. So I still think there is an appetite to take running backs. It's just not as crazy as it once was. Because I think there's a level between the elite guys and sort of everybody else. When you look, and I guess we'll probably dive into this when we talk about ADPs, there's a handful of running backs that you feel really, really good about. And then after a certain point, you get a drop off and you feel kind of queasy. You're like, I don't necessarily dislike these guys, but I dislike these guys in the spot I have to take them. And I think that's sort of where a lot of drafters are right now.
Yeah, I think what you just said, Marcus, is going to nail it on the head, where I think one of the more optimal draft strategies, and of course, once you start getting deeper into redraft and we start doing mock drafts, it'll become a lot more apparent. But I think when you said one RB and then take maybe 3 wide receivers after that, and then maybe sandwich it with another running back or maybe a tight end or quarterback, depending on how the draft goes, I think that might be the most optimal strategy right now.
Yeah. Or
just off the initial, maybe as the draft season takes place, we might see some other options that might be more beneficial. But right now, that what seems like the initial, most immediate, best potential strategy to put yourself in the best position. All right, so that's enough talking about the best stuff. We want to be talking about the worst. This is the hating episode, and that is what we're going to do to the fullest extent. So right now, Mr. Joshua, we're going to start off with you. Give us a player that you absolutely hate and don't want on your roster.
All right, so hating is not really my thing. If you follow me on,
that's what we're doing.
I'm very positive vibes.
No, that's what we're doing.
Positive vibes, and I tend to stick with some people that people hate on and try to infuse some hope into their situation. I talk about guys like Sam Darnold a lot, and other guys that I think still have a shot at being starters in the league. But today I will say, based on value, So value is always key.
Yeah.
And to me, if an ADP, as much as I love a player, their ability, their talent, if their ADP is priced too high, I'm going to pass and I'm going to move on and get someone at the same position much later down the line. And so for me, the first person I actually thought of is someone that I really enjoyed watching. He's a beast, and he plays the tight end position, is the young man, Sam Laporta. Now, Sam Laporta rightfully has almost a cult following already in fantasy football. He is an absolute baller. He is a stud. He gets the volume. He gets the catches. He's relied upon at key situations in games. And he made good on his rookie season, like really just showing everyone you don't have to wait 2 to 3 years to produce as a tight end in the league. Here's the thing, though. Right now, he's priced at a 3rd round pick in terms of ADP. And in any type of league that doesn't have a boost in premium for a tight end premium, I just don't think it's worth taking a tight end that early. Now, he averaged 14.1 fantasy points per game in PPR leagues last year, but you can wait multiple rounds, 2 to 3 rounds later, and grab a guy like George Kittle or Evan Ingram, who only averaged like 1 to 1.5 less points per game in terms of fantasy production. So I don't hate Sam Laporta, but I think because he's such a, like, he's the hot, flashy, sexy new name, that everyone kind of wants to have on their squad. Now, if it's Dynasty, that's a whole different story. But in redraft, I don't care about age. I care about production. And there are many guys after him that are going to bring just as good, if not equal, production, that kind of ceiling, many rounds later. So it kind of does go back to that old school feel now, where for a time there were guys like Travis Kelce where people thought it's wise to go with him because he had such an upper hand in the position. But now the separation between maybe the top 3 and then from 4 to 8 is not really that big of a difference where I'm going to spend such high draft capital in ADP. So Sam Laporta, I love you, even though you're part of the NFC North and you're one of the my Chicago Bears rivals, but you are not going to be likely on any of my fantasy rosters in redraft this upcoming season.
Yeah, for a quick reference and half-point PPR right now, Kelce is ADP of the 35th pick. Sam Laporta, if I'm looking at it correctly, he might be 25th.
Yeah, it feels right. And I think, you can even wait a little bit later and get a guy like Mark Andrews, who I think has the same sort of upside, the same kind of ceiling. And you get him a couple rounds later because he's coming off a year where the numbers weren't great. He was a little bit banged up, but a healthy Mark Andrews with Lamar Jackson has a lot of high-level potential. Travis Kelce, I know he's older, but, this is the guy who was the reigning king of tight ends for a long time. So I get where Josh is coming from, but we do like the shiny new thing. Yep. And Sam Laporta, it's funny because last year we were able to draft him late. Like if you drafted him at all, because I liked him but I drafted him as my second tight end, just sort of like hey, maybe this rookie sort of pans out. Like, who knows what's going to happen? Like, I didn't think I was drafting the number 1 tight end, and now all of a sudden everybody's gone like completely the other way to try to get this guy. Yeah, so I get it. I totally get it.
Not only that, Jameson Williams is supposedly he's going to be more involved, right, in the offense. And so if those rumors come to fruition, Laporta, yes, he's using the red zone, Josh, like you talked about. In critical moments, clutch moments, he will be used. But how often they use Jameson Williams, that's still up in the air. But it sounds like they're certainly, wanting to feature him a little bit more. Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jahmyr Gibbs in the pass game. There's a lot to work with there in Detroit.
Speaking of Amon-Ra, does anybody in the NFL have a cooler name than him?
I don't think so.
How do you feel about his brother Equanimous?
Yeah, that's okay. That's up there too. Yeah. The
Can
problem is,
as a kid, trying to write your name, everyone's like Bob, Jim, and he's like,
right? Like he's the kid. Like when the substitute teacher gets to your, like it's coming because like the teacher like stops and is like, and he's like, I'm here.
That's terrible. The problem is it's cooler, but if I have to practice saying it, then it's not cooler. I'm sorry. Alrighty. So Sam Laporta being too high on the list, I actually fully agree with this one. Not because I want to hate, but I actually agree. I'm not a big tight end person. I would still personally rather have the tight end with Patrick Mahomes as the quarterback. Maybe that's just biased, but I trust Patrick Mahomes and an offense that doesn't necessarily have premium options in the receiving core rather than Sam Laporta, who has about 3 different options other than him where the quarterback can go to. Of course, that is including the running back. But Steezy, where are you going on this one?
Man, so like Josh was saying, I mean, I love this player. I still think he's one of the best receivers in all of football. But as far as his situation, I think it's less than ideal. He might be working with arguably the worst quarterback group in all the National Football League. And I'm looking at Devontae Adams in Las Vegas, wide receiver 12 with an ADP of 17. So he's going in the middle of the second round on a team that's supposed to be run first, on a team that just added a Brock Bowers. I know the quarterback was different, but when Jimmy Garoppolo was a starter there, Jacoby Myers was getting a lot of love, putting up crazy statistical games. I remember last year, Jacoby Myers had multiple games in which I was just like, wow, multiple 25, 20, 30-point games. And I'm just like, he's a factor, right? And so I think when I look at the Las Vegas Raiders, they could contend for a playoff spot. But as far as Devontae Adams and his fantasy value, I mean, 17? Wide receiver 12? I mean, that's a little too rich for me. Last year, he had 6 games with less than 50 receiving yards. I expect that to kind of hover around the same mark. They're just not going to be a high-volume passing team. Again, they're run first. There's other options. Brock Bowers, I mean, you took him 13th overall. He's going to be utilized. I just talked about Jacoby Myers, Zamir White. He's going to be featured in the game plan. The quarterback play is going to be very, very erratic. He might have volume on his side, but as far as efficiency, as far as opportunities, as far as his quarterback situation, I don't like it. And at that price tag, I definitely don't like that. So Devontae Adams, I'm staying far and away from. Now, if I can get him in the bottom of the 3rd round, maybe top of the 4th round, that might be asking for a little too much. Then I might consider it. But as far as being drafted in the middle of the 2nd round, a wide receiver 1, nah, I'm good.
So what's interesting about Devontae is, one, on a side note, I think he's the best wide receiver in the league. Like, not necessarily from a fantasy perspective, from an actual NFL perspective, I think he's the best. And I don't even think it's a wide margin or a small margin. I think it is a wide margin. That being said, fantasy-wise, different story. But he does have a league-leading 33% target share. And last year, he had 45% of their air yards. And personally, I think Brock Bowers is going to be Kyle Pitts 2.0. But
wait, that's a good thing.
You mean good?
That's a good thing, man. Come on.
Are we talking about rookie Kyle Pitts?
Kyle Pitts is good, man.
No, he wasn't. He is.
He had 1,000 yards as a rookie. What are you talking about?
Kyle Pitts? No.
Is there a different Kyle Pitts I don't know about? Like, he had 1,000 yards as a rookie.
Yeah, come on.
Oh, we're talking about Arthur Smith, the Arthur Smith version of Kyle Pitts. Or is that the Kyle Pitts?
Right. He's doo-doo. He's just doo-doo.
Man, this is the season. He's going to be back. Kyle Pitts is definitely going to be back.
Nope. I would say I'm back in on Kyle Pitts, but I never left, so I can't get back in on something I never left.
It was a situation, the coaching.
There was a tight end in Cincinnati. I'm trying to remember his name. About maybe 5-6 years ago, that everybody was on this hype train year in and year out. I think it was like Tyler Eifert. There we go. And they got a new situation, new quarterback, new this, and everybody better than Tyler Eifert. I don't think so.
Kyle Pitts is better than Tyler Eifert.
You know what? He's just Kyle Pitts is going to be that guy that people just continue to just sunken cost fallacy. At that point, you have to support it because you're doing so far.
Tyler Eifert never had 700 yards in a season.
Yeah.
Like.
He was a touchdown machine, but he was never.
He was a touchdown machine for 1 year.
They're not comparable. Yeah, 1 year. I mean, even just in terms of their athleticism, it's not even close.
It's not even close.
I just don't see. I just think Kyle Pitts. He's going to be that guy. Yeah.
So you don't think the presence of Kirk Cousins? You don't think that opens up opportunities for Kyle Pitts? I mean,
when has Kirk Cousins ever really supported a tight end?
TJ Hawkinson.
Not really. Only a little bit. He wasn't like elite.
The volume was elite.
No,
TJ Hawkinson never had that volume in Detroit. For as fantasy relevant as he was in Detroit and Minnesota, his stock was through the roof.
I mean, Hawk is always ball. You get those IO boys at tight end, you're good to go.
Yeah.
I don't know. Especially a quarterback who is coming off Achilles injury. I don't know.
Okay, but Nader, aside from Drake London, who else does Kyle Pitts really have to compete with? Darnell Mooney?
I mean, we've been saying that for the
Darnell
past
Moore?
couple of years now.
Hey, don't worry,
Arthur
Jonas
Smith
Smith
was
is gone
offensive
now.
coordinator. Arthur Smith.
I don't think
you had
Arthur Smith's that bad.
You had a head coach who just you don't think he's that. One point last year, he had Michael Pruitt, who was his number 3 tight end, throw a pass in the end zone to Jonnu Smith, who was the number 2 tight end. Like, what are we doing?
And
He
it
was
worked.
laughing. He was laughing
It
on
worked.
our faces. He was teasing us.
It worked.
They spent what? They spent a top 8 pick on Kyle Pitts, who's like one of the most athletic, dynamic players, and like they made him a blocker. Like, what are we doing here?
Jonnu Smith is better.
Better than
At
what?
some point, he's just a better NFL football player.
He might be a better run blocker. He's a better run blocker. I'll give you that.
Even Pitts is actually, he rated pretty well in terms of run blocking. I think PFF grade. But, I mean, you got to understand, this guy is only 23. He's going to be 24 this year. So no one should have ever written him off. I think, situation definitely plays a big part. Okay. But if there's anyone that is going to bounce back, it's going to be Kyle Pitts at the tight end position.
This is the year, man.
Yeah.
This is the year.
It's just
I've heard that
quarterback
way
upgrade,
too many
lack
times.
of weapons. He kind of has to.
He's healthy now. Apparently, he wasn't healthy last year. Like,
They're never
everything is
healthy.
coming together.
The amount of times I've heard that from somebody and it just not working out. I don't know. I feel like it's just same old saga. It's one of those things where, you know what? If he balls out, good for him. I just don't want him to be on my roster for when he busts.
Great. I will.
Nader, you are a hater.
That's the point, right? That's what this episode is, right?
Man.
Like, so I mean, especially if we're talking about tight ends.
How did we get here? I don't even remember.
I just said
Talking about Devontae Adams and Brock.
yeah. Oh yeah, I forgot. We're still on Devontae Adams.
And then we started talking about Tyler Eifert.
I was like,
where'd that go, Tyler?
how did we get here?
So for everybody listening, I told everybody here that we're probably only going to get one person around. Just because usually, it takes a while. And this is the exact reason why, because somehow it's partially my fault. Actually, it's majority my fault, but it happened. So there we go. Back to Devontae Adams.
Yeah, Devontae Adams. So he was a wide receiver 1 in terms of total production last year. So he does have consistency that he's going to be around like 2 seasons in a row with 17 full games. So that's a plus. But his per game fantasy production went down a lot. He was, wide receiver 17 in fantasy points per game in PPR. And so a lot of these balling, wide receivers that they kind of hit that age cliff-ish around 30, which that's around where he is right now. I do worry a little bit about his production this year. So I think I'm with you, Steezy, that he's someone that I'm not super excited about grabbing in the second round. Mm-hmm. But if I do pick him, like, I don't think that it's a bad pick still, if that makes sense, right? Like, I'm not like looking forward to picking him, but some of the stats that Nader brought up too, just in terms of his volume and his usage, he's still going to be the alpha and like the man to throw it to there. But I just think, you're right. His efficiency has gone down. I just worry a little bit about, who's throwing him the ball, so there are things there where he may not be worthy of a kind of mid-second round pick.
And Josh, I want to ask you, and then Marcus, I want to hear your thoughts as well. But just real quick, Marvin Harrison or Devontae in the second round?
Oh baby, I'm sorry, I'm going rookie. I'm going Marvin.
You're going Marvin, right?
Yeah.
I have to.
I was like, I admit I get sucked into the shiny new thing, man. The left side of Marvin Harrison. That's where I am on him too.
Yeah, but I love Kyler too, and I think those two, like Kyler's he's going to be one of those guys. I think this season, I think his ADP right now is like in the 6th round of 1 QB leagues. He's going to be a game-winning pick later rounds for 1 QB leagues, 100%. And Marvin Harrison Jr. and then Trey McBride, who's another tight end that's a little bit overpriced, is going to be. They're just going to ball out together. It's going to be awesome to watch.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. And you mentioned Trey McBride too, because he's another one. You talk about Sam Laporta. Like I can pass on Sam Laporta and wait another round or 2 and get a Trey McBride and feel pretty okay with it. But back to your point, Steezy, about Devontae. It's one where I think objectively in my head, I'm sort of like, yeah, everything you said about it is true. And you look at his game-to-game logs last year. I mean, I'm looking at it right now, right? So it's like 6.6, 14.4, 29.2, and then he went like with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 weeks where he didn't even get to 9 points, right? Like it's just there were like these big explosions and then these really, really just low totals. And so like in my head, intellectually, I'm like, yeah, it's very risky. In my heart, though, I'm like, but it's Devontae Adams, right? And so
It's
like,
Devontae Adams.
you know, and so that's the part where I sort of go back and forth. And I think if I go through like the best ball teams I've drafted, I don't know that I've drafted him at all, or if I did, it's only been a couple of times, just because I'm with you. I just have concerns about what the Raider offense is going to be, about how much Gardner Minshew can sort of support all these guys, and so I kind of have to. It's what I call muscle memory, right? Like you look at a guy like Devontae Adams, and the muscle memory is just like, oh yeah, man, it's Devontae Adams. Click. And I have to sort of remind myself that doesn't always translate from year to year, especially, Josh, as you mentioned, older receivers, man. I mean, he's starting to get up there in age. And yes, he is still very talented, but at some point, the decline starts to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, and what really people also have to look at is when you specifically look at the game log, it's what weeks did he have those phenomenal games on? And of course, one of them was week 3 against Pittsburgh, but then all the way, you have to go all the way down to week 17 to Indianapolis for a 24. That was the next time he eclipsed 20 fantasy points. That's the only time he got near 20 fantasy points. And of course, that's the week 17, which is usually championship matchup. But if you had Devontae Adams on your team, you weren't you weren't there, so it doesn't matter. So that not only inflates his fantasy point potential, because obviously it happened when it didn't matter, it makes him look better and potentially a false trap for the next team. That being said, I definitely think Gardner Minshew is a much better quarterback than Aiden O'Connell. I do want to make that clear. I think that is a significant upgrade in the quarterback position.
Significant. I agree, it's an upgrade. I don't know about significant.
I was saying
no,
upgrade.
It's significant. Statistically, Gardner Minshew was as good as Trevor Lawrence last year.
But Trevor Lawrence was underwhelming last year.
Well, Trevor Lawrence is underwhelming in general.
That's
Minshew doesn't have Shane Steichen anymor. Shane Steichen is a wizard.
The youths call this a mid-off, right between the two.
I think Trevor Lawrence is a little better than mid. Like he hasn't been the
no. I mean AOC. Yeah, I mean
AOC and Gardner. No, that is 100%. Yes, you're right.
I still like Trevor Lawrence a lot. He's gonna boom this year too.
Nah, I think Trevor Lawrence is. Trevor Lawrence is the definition of mid.
No way.
Man.
Definition of mid.
No, like last year was not a great year for him, but like the first
year, that was a statistically better year.
Rookie year is a wash, right? That was a redshirt year because Urban Meyer was a disaster.
Still one of my favorite guys. Still one of my favorite.
He was on his grind in the wrong
one of my favorite
in the wrong way, in the completely wrong way. Second year, I thought he started to show potential. They rallied, they made the playoffs in large part because it looked like he was starting to figure it out. Last year was not what we wanted it to be, but I think he's still a really, really talented player. Again, maybe not the generational player we thought he was coming out of Clemson, but I think he is an above average quarterback.
Though he did get paid. He did get paid like a generational player.
He did get paid.
And the problem is he had one of the best wide receiving and weaponry core that any quarterback has in the league. If you looked at top to bottom, I don't think there was another team with a better weaponry core. Maybe the Niners would be a close comparison, but when it came down to it, I mean, he had all the weapons, all the reasons in the world to make a deep playoff run, and he didn't do it. He didn't even make the playoffs.
He didn't make the playoffs. But
he had a spectacular downward spiral. But again, this is another one of those moments where we go on a random tangent. I'm gonna have to pause myself on that one. All right, back to Devontae Adams. Any closing notes on him?
No, I think we.
I think this one out. I think this is the one where you have to kind of force yourself to skip him, not because you want to, but because you have to. If I had to give him a running back comparison, he is David Montgomery, where you don't draft him because you want to. You draft him because he's the only one left. I draft
David Montgomery a lot because I like David Montgomery.
It doesn't work out, now does it?
What are you talking about? David Montgomery was awesome last year.
Last year's different. David Montgomery on the Bears. How about that?
Hey, that was still pretty good too.
Yeah, but you never wanted to draft him. You never he's not like, oh my god, I gotta have him on my team. It's like, all right, he's there, I'll take him.
Yeah, he's always been a good later round value. I think he'll still continue to be that because Gibbs is the guy everyone wants. He's got the explosiveness, but man, Montgomery can hit those, between the tackles, get in the end zone. He's someone I would still draft probably, if I use him in my flex, if I have 1 or 2 flexes, and then definitely a good guy to have on the bench.
David Montgomery's like an old-fashioned donut, right? Like he's like just an old-fashioned cake donut. Like he's in the box, and you see the sprinkles and the chocolate ones and the glaze. Everybody's like, yeah, I'm gonna grab that one. And then like me, I'm gonna go get because like you get the old-fashioned cake donut with a cup of coffee. It's great. You don't realize it, but it's solid. It will hold you over. It's really, really good. People just it's just not as flashy. That's all. It's fine.
That's a great analogy. I didn't think of it like that.
Yeah, he's fine.
All right, Mr. Marcus, you are on the clock. Tell us who we should not have on our team.
I'm gonna go with a younger guy who made a huge splash last year, and we all loved him. And I think so. For me, it's sort of like what the other two guys have said. It's not about hating the player. It's about hating the ADP.
No, we hate the player.
Right now, I don't. This dude was fun to watch, but he right now is being drafted at his ceiling, and he's got another guy on his team that I think can give you similar production, and you can get him way, way later, and that's Devon Achane. And Devon Achane right now is getting drafted as a top 10, depending on if you're talking a half point or full point PPR, either running back 7 or running back 8, and it was great to watch that dude. I mean, he was a home run waiting to happen, right? Every time he got his hands on the ball, there was a good chance he was going to take it to the house. He averaged, 7.8 yards per carry last year? That is an insane number. I mean, it is impossible to believe he can replicate something like that again. And if he does, I don't think he gets the number of carries that's going to be necessary for him to finish as a top 10 running back, because the Dolphins have made a commitment to Raheem Mostert. They signed him to an extension. And look, I'll say this. Mostert had 18 touchdowns, which is by far a career. I think before that he had like 15 career touchdowns in his whole career. Right, total. And he had 18 last year. So like he's not going to do that again. But the Dolphins are still committed to using him. And so both these guys are going to split time. Throw in the fact that they drafted Jalen Wright out of Tennessee. And sure, Wright might not get a ton of opportunity, but he could get enough to wreck your year if you're really counting on Devon Achane. So to draft him as the RB7 or RB8, you are hoping that not only can he continue that insane efficiency he had last year, but that somehow he's going to get more opportunities away from Raheem Mostert. Oh, yeah, don't forget, they still have Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle to throw the football to, an offense that was very high-flying, that scored a ton of points. It feels way, way too rich. Right now, you're talking about having to take him at the tail end of the second round. I can't do it. I think he's a lot of fun to watch, but the situation just makes me really, really nervous to spend that kind of draft capital on him.
Yeah, not to mention Jonnu Smith is there now too. Just to add another wrinkle in it.
AJ?
Achane, I think I actually had him on my list as another guy to talk about. The way that you set it up, though, Marcus, I thought you were going to say Puka Nacua.
I thought so too.
Yeah, because
I was ready for this one.
I thought you were going to say, Cooper Kupp is a guy you can actually get later now because Nacua's going ADP 9. I mean, he's in the first round.
I'll say he does make me a little bit nervous too, but I can tell myself more of a story.
Yeah, Achane, man, all the things you mentioned, you basically hit every point that I had. I think hyper efficiency is never something to depend upon. And you give a guy like that more volume, it doesn't mean that the same yards per carry or yards per touch is just going to be multiplied out by how many more touches they get. And so I don't think he can keep that kind of hyper efficiency up. Raheem Mostert, people joke about his age, but yeah, I mean, he knows his way into the end zone, and he did that, almost 20 times last year, which is an insane amount. So, the young man too, right? Pretty much does the same thing that Achane does. You bring in a rookie with explosiveness, a lot of speed, and who knows? He might look like the next Achane. But you don't want either of them at cost if they're going to be that expensive. So I am 100% with you. Injury concerns involved as well with his size. I can't do it. I love drafting RBs early. He is not. He's actually someone that I kind of do hate on a little bit. Sorry, my respect. But I kind of hate on him a little bit just because I don't think he's the player that everyone wants him to be, even for fantasy. Like, I don't think he can keep it going for the whole season.
Again, he's RB8 going into the second round. Mostert is the RB30 going like literally almost 70 picks later.
Yeah.
Like
it's
feels
insane.
Like, it feels like a no-brainer for me just to wait.
Yeah.
Usually when you have so I've always went with the philosophy, if you have a 1A and a 1B type of player, always go with the 1B just because their draft value is significantly cheaper for not much of a really good reason other than the fact that they are the 1B. So real fast, Devon H, as you guys mentioned, he is going ADP 21. Travis Etienne is going 27. Would you rather have him?
Etienne, easily.
Yeah,
Etienne,
easily.
All right.
Easy.
Kyron Williams?
Easy.
Easy.
Yeah, Kyron,
okay.
easy. Although I'll say this, I like Blake Corum too.
Oh, yeah.
I like Blake Corum.
Corum is a fantasy darling right now in the Twitter sphere for sure. I mean, people just say he's Kyron Williams, but better. Like, he's the better Kyron Williams. He does everything Kyron Williams does, but better. That's what they say.
But he's not the pass catcher that Kyron is.
He's not the pass catcher but if you believe in draft capital, I mean, Kyron was a 5th round pick. Yeah. Corum was a 4th round pick.
Third.
I mean, it's a third. So there you go. Like if you believe in draft capital meaning something, the Rams have a little bit more invested in Corum than Kyron.
I can't trust the Rams with any running back though. I mean, the way that they did Darrell Henderson Jr. dirty, I still kind of,
I tried to hold on to that dream for a couple of years too.
Yeah, right.
I really did.
They even brought him back last year for like 4 games, and they dumped him. Right after.
Because I also Sean McVay has said multiple times that like he doesn't want to have after the Todd Gurley thing, after they ran Todd Gurley into the ground, McVay said they don't really want to do that with another running back. So, I was surprised that they ran Kyron Williams so much last year to the point that it made Cam Akers expendable. I would be surprised if they do that again this year.
Mm-hmm. Now,
real quick,
go ahead.
Just to go back to Devin Achane real quick, I thought this was an interesting nugget. So he had 4 100-yard games last year. Every game in which he had 100+ rushing yards, it was a part of a blowout. And so you guys remember that game against Denver when they dropped 70, he had 200+ rushing yards. He had 4 touchdowns, 2 rushing, 2 receiving. I don't expect Miami to beat another team by 50. I don't expect Miami to score 70 plus. And then in those 2 other games in which they were blown out by the Ravens, and then what was it, the Bills? Yeah. I mean, so like some of those numbers are a little fluky. And Josh, I thought you brought up a great point. You talked about how just because he was hyper efficient, it doesn't mean that, okay, you give him more volume, that efficiency will remain the same. I think what's his name? Tony Pollard is a great case study. Yeah. Last year, he was saddled with more volume, yet receiving numbers were down. Yards per carry was down. Rushing yards was down. Everything was down. And so we thought that, okay, with more volume, you combine that with his efficiency. Oh, he might be the RB1. Look what happened last year. And so, Josh, you brought up a great point. I'm also higher on Jalen Wright than most. Raheem Mostert, yes, he might be 31, 32 years old, but let's not forget, he was injury prone literally every single year of his career. Last year was really his first year staying healthy, so he doesn't have a lot of tread on his tires. Josh, you also brought up a Jonnu Smith. Miami also signed an Odell Beckham Jr. I know last year they never really used their wide receiver 3. You bring in an OBJ, I mean, you're going to have to use him more. And so Devin Achane, bottom of the second, top of the third, RB8, far too rich for me.
Well, you talk about Achane getting a lot of his yards in some blowout games. I mean, look, you're right. I don't know that the Dolphins are going to go out and score 70 points in a game or put up these ridiculous numbers. But if they do, then does that mean that we see Achane and Mostert sitting out in the 4th quarter and it's Jalen Wright getting all these opportunities, right?
So he's the Devin Achane.
Right, like he's the new Achane, right? Like all of a sudden, like the Dolphins are up by 3-4 scores in the 4th quarter, and then you got Mostert or Achane, and you're sitting there salty on a Sunday afternoon because it's Jalen Wright getting all these carries in the 4th quarter. Like that's not a ridiculous idea.
That's true.
Right. Great point.
Mm-hmm. But that would mean that Achane probably did a decent amount for them to be blowing out.
Hopefully. Or, Tyreek Hill had like 10 catches for 2 bills and a couple of touchdowns.
Or vintage OBJ showed up.
Right.
Jalen Waddle, underrated now.
Jalen Waddle. Yeah, who knows? Like it could have been so many different ways that happens.
Okay, so last one. Would you rather have Derrick Henry or Achane?
Oh, and redraft?
Derrick
Henry for sure.
Derrick Henry, and his ADP is the 31st, while Devon is the 21st. So there's a whole 10 picks.
That's insane. Like Derrick Henry legitimately could score 15 touchdowns this year.
Yeah, that's not far fetched at all.
I mean, I think as we get closer to the season and they start remembering who Derrick Henry is in redraft, like there's no way this ADP stays the same. I mean,
Gus had 13 touchdowns last year.
I mean he's
Yeah.
going to keep on going up.
So, because here's the thing about Baltimore, like, what was frustrating, like, for people who drafted DeAndre Swift last year. I drafted DeAndre Swift last year.
Good job.
It was
good job.
really fun to watch him run up and down the field and get tackled at the 2, and then all of a sudden
Tush,
you
push,
knew
baby.
what was coming, right? You knew that your dude wasn't going to score a touchdown. The Ravens don't use Lamar Jackson that way. Like, when he scores rushing touchdowns, it's because he broke one from like the 20 or something like that.
Yeah.
When they get down to the goal line, they hand the football off. Now you've got this monster back there, standing back there behind Lamar Jackson. Like, he legitimately could score 15 rushing touchdowns this year.
Yeah, like Gus Edwards did well, at the goal line for the Ravens. I mean, you bring in a guy like Derrick Henry, who's like Gus Edwards, Gus Bus. He's like a tank comparatively,
Yeah.
So they're going to definitely utilize him at the goal line. They brought him in for a reason. He's going to punch it in every time.
I always like to tell the story about Derrick Henry, like working at NFL Network when the year he was in the draft. And I mean, I knew who he was, but he took a tour around the network and came through the newsroom and he like walked past our desks and stuff. If I hadn't known who he was and you told me he was like the top edge rushing prospect in the draft, I would have been like, yeah, okay, sure. Because he's that big and like that solid of a human being. I'm like, so I can't imagine like trying to be a defensive back and here he comes like off the edge and I got to try to tackle him. Like, nah, nah.
Hard pass.
Hard pass. Business decisions all day.
Yeah.
Business decisions.
Yeah, he a girthy individual, if I could actually use that word.
Yes.
Marvin Harrison Jr. being drafted at 16. Why? No, I just don't see it. I have no analytical statistics to back it up other than the fact that I can't imagine that actually being a thing.
We've seen rookie wide receivers come in and just blow the top off of the league.
Yes,
You put him with a QB like Kyler Murray, who I think is underrated as a passer because he's a littler guy, I guess, but he can toss the ball very well. He's supported wide receiver ones in the past and DeAndre Hopkins. And so I think I am 100% okay with him going in the second round.
Yeah, but you have to think usually like when these rookie wide receivers blow up, their ADP was 10 plus or even undrafted. I think Jamar Chase's rookie year, I think his ADP was in the 8th to 9th round roughly.
That's because we had that weird freak out moment because he had a couple of bad practices and everybody's like,
he had some drops. Yeah.
Like, I was like, he can't see the football and he had
You
bad
can't see the
hands.
strike.
Like,
It's
right, he's having like that's because we all had brain lock. That's why his ADP fell. It had nothing to do with him at all.
I don't know, but a whole 7 rounds because some practice, or I don't know, like to sit there and ride, and you have to ride.
Yeah,
great point.
You're writing like the foundational piece of your fantasy team. This is the guy that has to put up minimum 10 to 15 points fantasy for you even to have a solid chance of winning your week, and you're placing it on a rookie.
Name a second wide receiver in Arizona.
The human
Trey McBride.
Wide receiver.
Done.
Name a second wide receiver in Arizona.
Yeah, I think it's Dortch, and they still got the second year guy, right?
Michael Wilson.
Michael Wilson.
Yeah.
But
they're
not, respectfully, they're not threats to
Mark. They're not his level.
They're
Yeah,
not.
but I mean, if you asked me to name like the second or third wide receiver in Kansas City, I couldn't do that either. But they're still
they're all second and third wide receivers.
Xavier Worthy, Rasheed Rice.
Yeah, he's
Hollywood.
Rasheed Rice. I mean, he's probably getting suspended. I don't know what's going on with Rasheed Rice.
I mean, like, right. I mean, like, I don't know. Everything about Marvin Harrison. You're talking about the guy was arguably the most talented wide receiver in this draft class. Who look, man. His dad was a Hall of Famer. Like, he has a guy who learned from. He has incredible talent, and he goes to a place where they're going to throw the football. He's got a good quarterback. He doesn't have target competition. Like, I'm all in.
Imagine being more physically gifted than your Hall of Fame wide receiver. Like, that's insane. That's just insane to me.
Bronny James wishes.
Exactly. Or any of Michael Jordan's kids.
Right, exactly.
Crazy.
I mean, yeah, but that goes to like Jerry Rice's son, Frank Gore's son. I mean, like, I don't know. I don't want to put like just name value. I mean, Randy Moss's son. I don't even think he's in the league anymore as a tight end.
But look, you got to look at the accolades though, man. You can't forget about what Marvin Harrison Jr. did like in his college years. I mean, he was the best receiver.
So why is Malik Neighbors 44 when he was right there?
He plays for the Giants.
Yes, but I mean,
he has Daniel Jones.
Yeah, but he also has probably, in my opinion, a better head coach or more offensive-minded head coach with just as money as a value of weapons. Like, there's no weapons in the Giants.
No, Neighbors is a big-time value this year, I think, because he is an absolute stunner. And Daniel Jones, he can actually throw the deep ball pretty well. And so as long as he stays healthy, I think Neighbors is going to be an absolute target hog this year. And just like you're saying, Nader, I think Neighbors is definitely going to be a value for if he gets picked at that still, stays around that ADP. And plus he has, an awesome last name for fantasy football team name. Right? Love thy neighbors, right?
Love thy neighbors.
Love,
like a good neighbors.
Boom.
I like that.
Well, yeah, but see, this is a hating episode, so love that. That's not going to work here.
But yeah, no, I mean, I think the Neighbors versus Harrison thing is strictly a quarterback issue because none of us trust Daniel Jones.
But you trust Kyler Murray?
Yes,
I do.
Yeah,
D-Hop was putting up 1,400-yard seasons.
That's D-Hop. Yeah, but D-Hop has made a name of playing with trash quarterbacks and still pulling up production.
Are you calling him a trash quarterback? Come on, man.
Yes, I am calling him a trash quarterback. I will stand on business and call him a trash quarterback. But that's a discussion for another time.
Brother, man, that's my Korean brother right here.
And he is half Korean. I forgot.
We have moved from hating into trolling now. Like, I don't know, man. I don't know, man.
They almost moved off of him.
No, they never did. That was
not because he wasn't talented. It was a money thing.
It was narrative too. I mean, just the whole video games and does he really want to play? It's just old people not understanding the next generation. You can play video games and still be a superstar.
And still be a star.
Yeah,
I mean that's what they all do. They all play video games. I mean, shit.
I mean, yeah.
That's true.
A lot of these guys have like esports teams that they
right, or they stream on Twitch. A lot of the Seahawks players stream on Twitch.
Yeah.
What are they playing, Madden?
Bro, they're playing Madden, 2K, and they're hosting streams. Like they want people to tune in. Tariq Woolen loves doing that. It's the only thing he posts if he's not at practice.
Yeah. Building your brand. I mean, nowadays that's there too, right? You got to build your brand outside of football too, so that when your time is done, you got a good following, doing other things.
Football does not last forever. So
it does not.
Not for long.
Exactly.
But when you're making like $150 a million a year, do you really want it to?
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy though. I think they need to get. I mean, this is a totally different subject, but I think they need to get more mentors and like people who really they can surround some of these young players with. Teach them like the financial, like stewardship, and I mean, there's just too many people losing all their money after making hundreds of millions of dollars, or even just like mental health and things. The league's always talking about like, come on, like we want to support the players. Somehow the teams need to come together and do something. I just feel like. And sorry, that's a different soapbox.
It's definitely a different show, but I think there's something to it about, and I know they try to sit these guys down, but I do think there's, it would be beneficial to have, a guy or somebody within the organization to sort of give them, because you're talking about, for a lot of these guys who've never seen anything, all of a sudden, they dump truck a whole bunch of money on you. I mean, I've heard players say that, like the moment they sign, the team's like, okay, now check your bank account, and all of a sudden, like, they'll go from having like, before they sign, they had like, $27 in the bank. Now all of a sudden, they've got like $5,027, right? Like it's just, right? Like, it's just,
right.
It's like a whole different thing. Like like for most people, if I'm, if I've never had any money and I'm 21, 22, and suddenly you give me $5 million, like I'd probably lose my mind too. Like so you need somebody just kind of sit you down and just kind of like. Sort of calm you down and kind of tell you what's the best thing to do about it.
Yeah, I think expecting a 21-year-old to not spend his money, I don't know. I think that might be a little, not necessarily unrealistic, but it's a hard task.
Yeah. I'll leave it this. So I won't name the person, but a former NFL player who was on TV for a while told me that once during training camp, those like games you play on your phone, like whatever, and like they ask you like, spend 99 cents here and get this power up and get this upgrade or whatever, right? Like he told me, he didn't give me the number, but he said he spent 5 figures on one of those games.
Oh my.
Right, so that's a minimum of $10,000, like minimum.
He was crushing that candy real hard.
Apparently, to the point that his financial advisor was like, "Hey, bro, you should probably chill out on that. I was like, man, why didn't you just take like an Xbox to train?
At that point, I mean, wow.
But yeah, so like, like financial literacy is an important thing that not everybody has, but a lot of guys could probably use.
Yeah.
Sure.
Indeed.
True. The Fortnite skins do hit though.
This guy.
All right, so back on topic right now. So Marvin Harrison, closing remarks on him. I mean, at 16, you guys are okay with? I mean, he's going ahead of Devontae.
Yeah,
Adams
I think you're the only hater on this one.
really.
Yeah, I think you're on
Good.
you're on an
Like over
island.
Devontae. Over Devontae.
Because like I said, he's a foundational piece at number. I mean, pick 12 is that? No, pick 16.
Your second player. Your second player.
I don't know, like to leave it in the air like that. That's a tough ask.
Well, he's not going to leave it in the air. He's going to bring it down for a touchdown right there.
Right.
Boom.
Hey, I mean, but Nader, we've seen time and again rookie receivers just coming in and putting up monster numbers. Nowadays, it's like just because he's a rookie, it doesn't mean you should stay away from him. I mean, again, Justin Jefferson, there was the OBJ when he first kind of burst onto the scene. I mean, Jamar Chase, right? And so, again, he has opportunity. He has the talent. There's not much in the way as far as target competition. I mean, how does he not succeed?
Okay,
That's
so
what I want to know. How does he not succeed?
If I can just kind of use a rookie example, like from my own Chicago Bears, Rome Odunze is a talent that I really believe in as well. But he's now in a situation where he's got 2 Pro Bowl top tier, wide receivers on the squad, in Keenan Allen and DJ Moore. For redraft, Rome Odunze, if he was going that high, I'd be like, hey, you need to take a step back. You need to see the situation. But yeah, right now, Marvin Harrison Jr. and Malik Neighbors, they're going to be target hogs right away coming into the season. And, when you're thinking like 120 plus targets, potentially, and with their talent, even if there was not top-notch QB play, even just on volume alone, I think they're people that they're players that I would not really hesitate to draft, especially at current, values.
Yep,
for sure.
100%.
That's interesting. All right, you know what? I'll reevaluate that. I'll rethink about it. I'm not sold though. I'll be honest with you guys on that one. I don't know. It's tough.
It'll take some time.
It'll take some time. I'll let it simmer down and let it like sizzle a little bit, and then I'll come back to you guys on how I feel
we'll
about
bookmark this for week 4.
I'm down.
Bring it back.
For like
I'm down.
week 4. There it is.
All right, so right now we're going through the home stretch of the episode, and I'm just gonna start naming names, and then it's just gonna be a yay or nay to you guys. All right, does that sound good?
Cool.
Yes, sir.
All right, so let's see. Chris Olave.
Yeah.
Yay.
Yay.
He's about the only.
But
safe
not
I think
super
I've drafted.
exciting.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
Brandon Ayuk.
Yay. Super yay.
Deebo
Contract
Samuel?
year.
Prove it
Yeah.
season.
Yeah.
Also a yay.
Deebo.
Debo? Yay.
I'll also say yeah.
Yeah.
I think Debo's better in real football than he is in fantasy.
Fair enough. I like
Agreed.
that take. Drake London.
Yeah.
Yay.
Josh Jacobs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Eh.
He's not even that expensive anymore.
No.
Like you get him in the 5th round, I think, right now. So
That's a
I'll
good
take
point.
that all day.
But I do think Marshawn Lloyd's going to have a bigger role than people are thinking right now.
Stephon Diggs.
Yay. Yay.
I go back and forth on because I worry about all 3 of those guys I think are going to have big weeks. It's going to be hard to figure out when.
Yeah.
Nico's the one I want out of those 3.
Even though he's the most expensive?
Yeah.
Yeah, see, that's why I'm like, I think that's why I've been going to like Tank.
Yeah,
Tank was the guy.
I think that Nico's the main guy. I would take him over the other 2.
I prefer them all in best ball more than redraft because I don't want to have to figure it out.
Yeah.
Right. But see,
Fair
with
enough.
Stephon, I think he could have a Mike Evans-esque sort of year. I mean, don't forget, y'all, he's in need of a contract extension, so he's definitely playing for that. And this is the most talented quarterback he's ever had, like pure passing quarterback.
Yeah.
CJ Stroud.
That's
Yeah,
why
he's so good.
that's when I do draft Stephon Diggs, because in my head this is like his Thanos, like I'm just gonna wreck the world year to prove that I still have
Right.
something left.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, let's switch it up to Jalen Hurts.
Yeah.
At ADP, I'm gonna say nah though, because I'm not. I think he's definitely going to cede some of those goal line touchdowns to Saquon, but maybe his passing numbers make up for that a little bit. But at ADP, no.
Yeah, so we got kind of have to qualify what the yay is. Definitely, he's one of the elite QBs you're going for. Konami code, all that. He's got the rushing upside. He can throw the ball. But I actually think that guys like him and Josh Allen, those are guys I usually don't end up with on my squad, just because they do go in the top 3 rounds. And you can get a guy like Anthony Richardson this year who has that same kind of elite rushing upside. And I think you can get him in the 5th or the 6th round right now. Lamar Jackson even goes a little bit later than those guys. So, yeah, the value I don't love, but in terms of a player that's going to be elite, at QB, I would say, yeah.
Right now, I'm a little bit struggling to want to take Philadelphia players just because, other than AJ Brown, just because I want to see them fix the offensive issues that they had last year, more specifically against all-out man blitzes. They struggled so heavily on that last year that it has sort of become a little bit of a mini meta in the NFL. And if they don't fix that, then I don't see too many viable ways that they become fantasy relevant. But I'll add Josh Allen to that as well.
Again, at ADP, like I'm not quite sure.
It's hard.
But
Nay.
the fact that he runs a lot, scores a lot of rushing touchdowns helps keep him afloat.
In theory, he is an RB2 and a quarterback 1 in one position.
He's been their best goal line back since he got drafted.
100%.
Yeah. So I mean, you're almost drafting a running back by drafting him, in theory. Alrighty. Last but not least, Mike Evans.
Yeah.
Nah.
No?
What's his ADP right now? Do you have that up right now?
35.
Yeah, I'll take him. He looked good with Baker Mayfield. I mean, it's undeniable that they had a connection. I tweeted out, his nickname is Pat Cake because he's Baker's man.
I did see that.
And
I think I groaned then the way I groaned now.
But it's true. I mean, Godwin is still there, and I love Chris Godwin as a value wide receiver as well. But Evans, he looked every bit kind of the dominant go up and get the ball guy when called upon. I would like him to get a little bit more volume, but he's someone, especially at that price, he could easily be a wide receiver 2 again. So yeah, I'll take him.
I'll take him.
I guess for me, I'm just not on board at that ADP because I'm high on Jalen McMillan. I think Dave Canales, again, he's a wizard himself, and he's no longer there, right? Yeah. And we've seen quarterbacks after David Canales leaves, not necessarily the same. And Josh, you already brought it up. Mike Evans didn't have the highest of volume, right? And so do we expect him to repeat what he did? Yeah, I mean, I don't. He certainly can. But again, Jalen McMillan, no more Dave Canales. I'm also high on Bucky Irving. I don't know. But at that ADP, no, but I do still. I do.
love those rookies.
I do. But just that ADP, it's a no for me. But if I can get him like in the 40s, yes. But at current ADP, nah.
All right, that's going to wrap up this episode. So we're going to go around the horn and let everybody reintroduce themselves and, of course, tell you guys where they could see you on their socials. We'll start with Mr. Marcus.
Yeah, you can find me. Most everything's on Twitter, Marcas G, MarCasG. But in case you don't know, I work for a little startup called the National Football League. We do a podcast over there a couple times a week, do a live streaming show on our YouTube channel, and fortunate enough to work with the really good, smart folks at Matthew Berry's Fantasy Life. I host a podcast with Dwayne McFarland, who, if you're not following Dwayne McFarland, I don't know what you're doing with your life. He is incredibly smart. He makes me better and smarter at my job all the time. So like I said, but most of the stuff you can find on Twitter, it's kind of where the clearinghouse for everything that I'm doing.
Mr. Josh.
All right. You can find me on X at JBCHO Knows, not like the body part, but like nose, like with your brain. So at JBCHO Knows. I do daily content in season, a lot of redraft content, sleepers, waivers, trade questions. I'm trying to answer every question that I get. As the follower count goes up, it gets a lot harder, but I really try to just help out as many people to win their leagues and just connect with people, on a deeper level, even than football a lot of times. So just happy to be here. Thanks for having me on. It's awesome. Got to chop it up with Steezy and Marcus. Really appreciated the conversation and look forward to more in the future.
There we go, Mr. Steezy.
Yeah, this is my first time working with each and every single one of you guys, and I know for a fact this definitely won't be the last time. I had an absolute blast. I had a great time, and you can find me at Steezy A Smith. I don't put out as much fantasy content as I used to. Working for Sportstopia kind of, let's say, traumatized me a little bit. I'm joking, but I'm more like in Seattle media, right? So for all my people here in Seattle, I'm the lead guy over at Dub C. Obviously, You'll find a whole bunch of Seahawks stuff on my YouTube, Instagram. I'm not active on Twitter like I used to be, but if any of that sounds interesting, at Steezy A Smith. And I still like to give out fantasy advice on the side. You know, every year once redraft season kind of comes around, I have about 20 to 30 friends hit my line asking for advice. Should I draft him? Should I draft him? So I still like, you know, doing that on the side, but primarily it's Seahawks and NFL stuff over here.
There we go. All right, that is going to have to wrap up this episode. And of course, if you want, actually, you know what? It's better you don't follow my Twitter. Actually, it really is better that you guys don't. I don't need that type of information out there. But other than that, hey, good luck, everybody.
I'm ready. I'm ready. I'm ready for all today. Through all